Hi, the motion is this House as a prominent LGBTQIA activist will not detransition. I'm here as test speaker for Prime Minister. Kimberley will be Leader of Opposition. This is round 3. As much as side government believes in personal autonomy, sometimes there are causes that are greater than each and every one of us, which requires individuals to make sacrifices for the greater good. We believe that the LGBTQIA fight is one such cause. What is our stance? Side government believes that as a prominent LGBTQIA activist, we should prioritize the interests of the movement over the individual. And there are 3 reasons for this stance. Firstly, as activists, you actively and consciously taken up the role of promoting LGBTQIA rights, and therefore that should be a priority for the individual. Secondly, the LGBTQIA community got this individual where they are today, which means that their fame, their fan base, and their wealth are largely contingent upon the LGBTQIA community. Therefore, we believe that it is unjustified that this individual puts their own interests over the community that brought the person to where they are today. Third reason, as someone who cares for the LGBTQIA community because this person is an activist, we believe the welfare of the community is intertwined with the welfare of that individual. What does our world look like? Our world is when this individual continues their brand of activism, they promote choice for individuals to to enter the transgender community, and they hide any form of regret and don't show it to the general public. 2 arguments. Firstly, why activism will be better in a trans body, and secondly, why this act of detransitioning will undermine the credibility of the LGBTQI movement. First argument, why activism will be better in a transgender body. Note that a lot of times when we look at activists, what people want from them the most is relatability, which means that if an individual is perceived to be relatable and able to understand the causes and understand the struggles of one's fight, they are more likely not to gain traction. We've seen this in how Barack Obama promoted black rights because he himself was an African American, and how Hillary Clinton, although running on the same platform, could not gain the same amount of traction because she was a white individual. Therefore, we believe that as in a trans body, this person is much better able to promote their brand of activism. They are more likely to get airtime in radio talk shows. They're more likely to get places to give a speech at pride parades. And note that this is important because this individual already has an established cult of personality. This person is already a prominent activist within a community. Therefore, we believe that it's important for this individual to remain at that spot because there are only a certain number of individuals with that kind of cult of personality, and it's a huge blow for the LGBT community to lose any form of activist. What's the comparative? In the world of opposition, if this individual continues their brand of activism as a queer activist now, we believe that this person will get much less traction because people not only not believe in the things that this person is saying, they will also more likely not shame this individual for being a fake queer because essentially this person is now a cisgender person because this person has detransitioned. People don't believe, and people don't believe in what this person says, and they think that what this person says is no longer credible. We believe it is a huge loss for the LGBTQIA community to have such a prominent individual lose their influence and lose their traction, especially in a time when numbers for the LGBT community and number of prominent activists is at a premium, and it's most important that we continue the number of individuals that can promote this kind of activism at the highest level. Second argument, why this act of detransitioning will undermine the credibility of the LGBTQIA movement. One of the rhetorics of conservative movements regarding LGBT, more likely than not, they're saying that God has a plan, you should stick to the plan, and more often than not, they also say that whatever sexuality you're going through is just a phase. How does this act of detransitioning strengthen that rhetoric? This act of detransitioning basically proves that it is correct, it is right that God has a plan, that eventually, no matter how much you want to deviate, eventually you come back to the right path. It also strengthens the rhetoric that it's just a phase, because now that you experimented with your different sexuality, you eventually want to go back to what your original sexuality was. And know that because this individual is prominent, it means that these individuals are more likely not to get the most amount of airtime, get the most amount of discussions from conservative groups. Which means that whatever kind of counter rhetoric that you want to come out on side of opposition is much less likely to become effective because we're talking about prominent activists here. Secondly, we also talk about infighting within the movement, right? Because not only there are outside criticism, there are more likely not to be criticism from inside the movement as well. Because some people no longer believe that this individual is still queer because that essentially is a cisgender individual now. Some individuals also don't believe that this individual deserves a place in the community anymore because the act of detransitioning is perceived as an act of betrayal by some individuals. This means they will take away valuable airtime from talk shows and radios, airtime that could have been used to promote rights now will be used to talk about this individual and whether the act of detransitioning was correct or not. The comparative is in our world. We have a unified front. We have less airtime spent on attacking each other, but rather attacking the outside structures to prevent these communities from gaining more rights. For someone who not only pledged allegiance to the LGBTQIA cause, but also benefited immensely of it, it is no longer acceptable to claim that the fate of the organization and the fate of the individual are separate entities.
Yes. Kimberley, L3. Yeah. Especially in the Prime Minister's speech, where we can definitely see a lot of things are in contention, is the idea that, number one, your airtime will be questioned, your credibility will be questioned, the LGBTQIA movement, as of now, must remain a united front. I think it's very important for us to realize how time-sensitive this individual coming out and detransitioning is extremely important. In my speech, I'll do a couple of things. I'll analyze 4 things for you. Number one, how time-sensitive it is and why we must do it as of right now. Secondly, why the LGBTQIA community will be better off under the side of opposition. But thirdly, even if the LGBTQIA movement is not better off, we definitely don't owe it to our community, considering this is an active debate. And fourthly, the comparative under our side. But before that, 3 boxes, right? Number one, why the community definitely outweighs self-interest, right? And that's something that came out from Jason's speech. Firstly, we definitely disagree. But even if that is the case, we believe that the ability for that person to fight for a better cause in this community would definitely be a lot easier, assuming number one, they were comfortable in the own body that they were in. But secondly, the only way for us to definitely fight for this way is to, and I'll definitely explain this a lot more in my speech, but I will definitely tell you why, number one, individuals are not punching bags and do not owe it to their community over their self-interest. But second, why much less attraction and experimenting within a point of time lowers down or decreases your credibility? Number one, we think this is a whole lot less. This is definitely not true because number one, we think that even if the attraction is less, we believe that these are types of things that should be questioned, right? Is experimenting necessarily wrong even if you go back to being the original gender that you were? And we think these are the type of airtimes or these are the type of talks that should definitely be guaranteed airtimes, considering these are things that people will definitely be going through and questioning throughout this time. So even if this might not be the best conversation to have in your airtime to gain rights, we definitely think these are these type of conversations that you would definitely need to have in order to help your community and the individuals in your community the most. But thirdly, let's analyze that's all. So 4 things, right? Number one, time sensitivity. Especially right now when the LGBTQIA movement is in the process of establishing themselves. We think it's very important for cases like this to be drawn out in public or to be opened out in the public as soon as possible because number one, we think that this movement is on the basis or exists on the basis to ensure that number one, we definitely guarantee that people should feel comfortable with their identity. Let it be whether or not they were once of a former gender and switch back to that former gender. We think that these are the type of things that are very important for us to establish in our community, the support structure that we will definitely give to you. But secondly, the amount of things or the airtime that will definitely give you credit for because number one, we don't think that we're just going to go for conventional means of just telling you whether or not being homosexual is right or wrong, whether or not we will give you that support structure. It's important for us to establish that their support structure is undeniable in all cases. But before that, sure.
How would you allow more people to be comfortable in their bodies when you strengthen the rhetoric that God's plan is always correct and it's always just a phase if you have deviant sexualities?
I think the best idea of this policy is showing you that there are multiple and plethora of examples of individuals. So number one, a person that does exist as a transgender, but a person that can exist as a transgender and then regret that decision because a lot of times these are the cases for some people or may not be some cases for some people, but we need to recognize that there are some people going through this situation and the only way that they can be relatable to another individual is if you come out right now and if you tell people that once you switch back, you did regret that decision as of right now. But the harm still exists even if they regret this toy, right? So even if they don't come out and don't regret it, then you also harm a lot of people that cannot relate to your side of the house, and you harm a lot of people to be able to identify with themselves, and that's even more harmful on your side of the house. But thirdly, why in this case, in an active debate, why in this case we do not owe it to our community in totality? Number one, if you are an activist in this movement, and the ability for you to contribute to the progression of this movement is extremely vital, we think in this case it's even more harmful for you to, number one, it's very hard for you to, number one, preach about how it is and how happy you are to be a transgender, knowing that in your heart you do not want to be a transgender, and knowing in your heart you are uncomfortable with the body that you're currently living in. That's even more harmful. So what is the alternative? Number one, it's either you, in the future, you choose to buy into that guilt, or you choose to buy into whatever you want to be, and you change in the future. That is a whole lot more harmful in comparison to changing now, because all of the harm that they tell you that will happen on the side of opposition will definitely happen under the side of government, but it's exaggerated a lot more. But secondly, assuming they don't change, and this is the more likelihood of the outcome that's coming out from government, number one, they will definitely be a lot harder for them to, number one, preach for that community that they so love. But also, secondly, it also promotes the idea that they are uncomfortable changing back into their gender, and that's even a lot more harmful to people that are viewing this person. But thirdly, it is a lot more harmful to that person, because the ability for me to fight the fight that I want to fight for is a lot less. So I'm probably going to opt out of this movement at the end of the day, because I just don't feel comfortable being the person I say I am. I understand that in this fight for the LGBTQIA movement, it is very hard for us to give a united front, even if we want to, right? But knowing that at the end of the day, we fight for certain things like being able to be comfortable with your identity, or being able to self-actualize with the person that you want to be, that is something we will definitely fight for, even if people regret that choice.